I never thought I'd be in this situation. My life has completely unraveled over the past few months, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all. I guess I should start from the beginning. I'm Miles, 28M, and until recently, I was engaged to Dakota, 27F. We met during our senior year of college at a mutual friend's party. I remember being struck by her infectious laugh and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her passion for environmental science. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of hiking and our dreams of traveling the world. After graduation, we both landed jobs in the same city. Dakota started working for an environmental nonprofit, while I began my career in software development. We moved in together after a year of dating, and everything seemed perfect. We complemented each other well, her spontaneity balanced out my more planned approach to life. We'd spend weekends exploring new hiking trails or trying out eclectic restaurants in the city. Our families got along great too. My parents adored Dakota, always commenting on how she brought out the best in me. Her parents welcomed me with open arms, and I became close with her younger brother, often joining him for basketball games. After 4 years together, I decided to propose. I planned an elaborate hiking trip to the spot where we had our first kiss. I hid the ring in my backpack and got down on one knee at sunset, overlooking the valley. Dakota cried tears of joy and said yes without hesitation. We were on cloud 9, excitedly planning our future together. We set the wedding date for the following summer and dove into planning. Dakota was thrilled, poring over bridal magazines and creating Pinterest boards. I was happy to let her take the lead, content to see her so excited about our big day. Everything seemed perfect until about 3 months ago. Dakota started acting different. At first, I chalked it up to stress from wedding planning. She became moody and distant, constantly glued to her phone. When I'd ask if everything was okay, she'd snap at me or brush off my concerns. I tried to be understanding, thinking maybe she was just overwhelmed with work and wedding stuff. I started planning little surprises to cheer her up, bringing home her favorite takeout or suggesting we take a day off for a hike like we used to. But nothing seemed to help. Then she started going out more without me, claiming girls' nights or work events. I didn't think much of it at first, we'd always maintained our own social lives. But the frequency increased, and she'd come home late smelling of alcohol. One night, she didn't come home at all. She texted saying she was crashing at a friend's place after having too much to drink. I offered to pick her up, but she insisted she was fine. Something about the whole situation felt off, but I tried to push my doubts aside. A week later, I came home early from work, hoping to surprise Dakota with dinner. Instead, I was the one who got a surprise. I walked into our bedroom to find Dakota in bed with another man. My world shattered in that moment. The guy scrambled to get dressed while Dakota burst into tears, begging me to let her explain. As if there was any explanation that could make this okay. I was in such shock that I could barely speak. I just turned around and walked out, ignoring Dakota's pleas for me to come back. I drove around aimlessly for hours, trying to process what I'd just seen. How could Dakota do this to me? To us? We were supposed to get married in a few months, and now everything was ruined. When I finally returned home, Dakota was waiting for me. Through her tears, she confessed that the guy was Chris, 28M, her ex-boyfriend from high school. Apparently, they'd reconnected on social media a few months back and started an affair. I felt like I was going to be sick. All those nights she was out with friends or working late, she'd been with him. The woman I thought I knew, the one I was ready to spend my life with, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Dakota begged me not to leave, saying it was a mistake and didn't mean anything. She swore up and down that she loved me and wanted to make it work. But I couldn't even look at her. I packed a bag and went to stay with my brother, needing space to process everything. For the next week, Dakota bombarded me with calls and texts. She oscillated between apologizing profusely and getting angry at me for not responding. I ignored most of it, still too hurt and confused to deal with her. Finally, after a week apart, I agreed to meet up to talk. I thought I was ready to hear her out, maybe even consider working things out. But then she dropped another bombshell. She was pregnant. And she wasn't sure if the baby was mine or Chris's. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. Not only had Dakota cheated, but now there was a child involved that might not even be mine. She swore up and down that she wanted to make things work with me, that Chris meant nothing to her. She even suggested we raise the baby together regardless of paternity. I was furious. How could she expect me to just forgive her betrayal and raise another man's child? I told her there was no way I could stay with her after what she'd done. I needed a paternity test as soon as possible. Dakota didn't take my reaction well. She accused me of abandoning her when she needed me most. She said if I really loved her, I'd stand by her no matter what. But I couldn't get past the lying and cheating. I told her we were done for good. The next few weeks were hell. Dakota refused to leave me alone, constantly calling, texting, and showing up at my work and apartment. She told all our friends and family that I'd left her while she was pregnant. She conveniently left out the part about cheating with her ex. I tried to keep my distance and focus on healing, but Dakota made it impossible. She'd alternate between crying and begging me to take her back, and angrily accusing me of ruining her life. It was emotional blackmail and I was at my wit's end. Our friends were split. Some understood my position and supported me, while others thought I was being cruel for abandoning Dakota during her pregnancy. It was exhausting trying to defend myself and explain the situation over and over. Work became a struggle too. I couldn't focus, my performance was slipping, and my boss was starting to notice. I was barely sleeping, constantly stressed about when Dakota would pop up next or what new rumor she'd spread about me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the results of the paternity test came back. I wasn't the father, Chris was. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. While I was glad I wasn't tied to Dakota for life, it was still painful to have my suspicions confirmed. I thought that would be the end of it. Dakota knew for certain the baby wasn't mine, so surely she'd leave me alone now. I was wrong. She showed up at my apartment in tears, saying Chris wanted nothing to do with the baby. She begged me to reconsider and help her raise the child, insisting I'd be a better father than Chris. I was stunned by her audacity. After everything she'd put me through, she still expected me to clean up her mess. I refused and told her to leave me alone for good. Dakota didn't take it well. She screamed at me, calling me selfish and saying I'd regret abandoning her and the baby. That was the last straw. I knew I needed to take legal action to protect myself. I contacted a lawyer and filed for a restraining order against Dakota. The judge granted it given her pattern of harassment. It's been a month since then and things have finally calmed down. Dakota can no longer contact me or come near my home and work. I've blocked her on everything and asked friends and family not to pass along any messages from her. I'm still reeling from everything that's happened. The future I thought I had with Dakota is gone. I'm trying to focus on healing and moving forward, but some days are harder than others. I know I made the right choice in leaving, but part of me still hurts over the betrayal and loss. I guess I'm looking for advice on how to fully move on from this mess. How do I trust again after being so blindsided? And how do I deal with the guilt Dakota tried to put on me about the baby? Any words of wisdom would be appreciated. Update 1. It's been about 2 months since my last post, and unfortunately, things have only gotten more complicated. I really thought getting the restraining order would be the end of it, but Dakota has found new ways to try and manipulate me. A few weeks ago, I started getting calls from mutual friends saying Dakota had been telling everyone that I was the one who cheated on her. She was spinning this whole story about how I'd had a long-term affair and left her when she got pregnant. It was infuriating to hear how she was twisting the truth. I spent days doing damage control, explaining the real situation to anyone who would listen. Most people believed me, especially once I mentioned the paternity test and restraining order. But there were still some who bought into Dakota's lies. I lost a few friendships over it, which stung even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. One of the hardest losses was my friend Tom, 29M. We'd been close since college, and he was supposed to be one of my groomsmen. But he'd always had a bit of a crush on Dakota, and he chose to believe her version of events. He accused me of abandoning Dakota in her time of need and said he couldn't be friends with someone who would do that. Losing Tom's friendship was like a punch to the gut. Then there was the issue with our shared friend group. Dakota and I had been part of a tight-knit circle of friends since college. Now, every get-together was awkward. People felt like they had to choose sides. Some friends tried to stay neutral, but that often meant excluding both Dakota and me from events to avoid drama. I found myself feeling increasingly isolated. Work wasn't any easier. Despite the restraining order, Dakota found ways to interfere. She started calling my office, pretending to be a client. My boss was understanding at first, but as it continued, I could tell he was getting frustrated. I was constantly on edge, worried that Dakota would show up or cause a scene that could jeopardize my job. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I got served with papers. Dakota was suing me for child support, claiming that because we were engaged when she got pregnant, I had a financial obligation to the baby. I was floored. How could she possibly think this would work? I immediately called my lawyer, who assured me the case had no merit. We have DNA proof that I'm not the father, and Dakota and I were never married. But still, the stress of potentially going to court was overwhelming. The weeks leading up to the hearing were a nightmare. I could barely sleep or eat. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios where somehow, despite all logic, the judge would side with Dakota. My parents tried to be supportive, but I could tell they were worried too. They'd always loved Dakota and were struggling to understand how things had gone so wrong. The day of the hearing arrived and I was a nervous wreck. Dakota showed up looking smug, like she thought she had this in the bag. Her lawyer tried arguing that I had acted as a father figure during the pregnancy and therefore had a responsibility to the child. They even brought up old social media posts where I had expressed excitement about becoming a dad. It felt like they were twisting every happy moment we'd shared into something to use against me. I felt sick listening to them paint me as some heartless monster who had abandoned his family. Thankfully, the judge saw right through it. He dismissed the case immediately, telling Dakota there was no legal basis for her claims. I felt such relief walking out of that courtroom. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But my relief was short-lived. That night, Dakota started bombarding me with messages from fake numbers. She went on and on about how I'd ruined her life, how she was struggling to make ends meet, How the baby would grow up fatherless because of me. I didn't respond, but it was hard not to let her words get to me. One message, in particular, stuck with me. Dakota wrote about how she'd had to move back in with her parents because she couldn't afford rent on her own. She described feeling ashamed and scared about raising a baby alone. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I reminded myself that this was all a result of her choices, not mine. I'm trying to stay strong and remember that none of this is my fault. Dakota made her choices and now she has to live with the consequences. But there's still a small part of me that feels guilty, even though I know I shouldn't. I'm focusing on myself as much as I can, throwing myself into work, reconnecting with supportive friends, making plans for the future. I've started seeing a therapist to help process everything that's happened. It's been helpful to have someone objective to talk to. But Dakota's shadow still looms over everything. I just want to be free of this mess for good. I'm considering looking for jobs in other cities, thinking a fresh start might be what I need. But part of me worries that running away won't solve anything. I guess I'm just looking for reassurance that I'm doing the right thing by standing my ground. Am I being too harsh? Should I have tried harder to work things out with Dakota? I know logically that I'm not responsible for her or the baby, but emotionally, it's still a struggle sometimes. Any advice on how to move forward would be appreciated. How do I rebuild my life and relationships after all this drama? And how do I protect myself if Dakota tries anything else in the future? Update 2. Another month has passed and things have taken yet another crazy turn. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more complicated, Dakota has managed to drag even more people into her web of lies. About 2 weeks ago, I got a call from my cousin Mark, 30M. He sounded hesitant, which was weird because we've always been close. Growing up, Mark was like the older brother I never had. We spent summers together at our grandparents' lake house, and he was always there for me during tough times. So hearing him sound so unsure immediately put me on edge. Mark said, "Miles, I don't know how to tell you this, but Dakota's been talking to people in our extended family." My heart sank. I asked him what she'd been saying, though I had a pretty good idea. Mark explained that Dakota had been reaching out to various family members, telling them how I'd abandoned her and the baby, how she was struggling to make ends meet, and how cruel I was being. She'd even contacted my grandmother, who's been in poor health lately. The thought of her upsetting my grandma made my blood boil. I was furious. It wasn't enough for her to try and turn our mutual friends against me, now she was going after my family too. Mark said most people were skeptical of her story, especially since they knew about the cheating and the paternity test. But a few of my more distant relatives were buying into it. I spent the next few days calling family members, trying to set the record straight. Most were understanding, but I could tell some of them still had doubts. It was exhausting having to relive the whole ordeal over and over again. My Aunt Susan was particularly difficult to convince. She's always been a bit of a busybody, and she seemed almost excited by the drama. She kept pressing for details, asking if I was absolutely sure the baby wasn't mine. It took everything in me not to lose my temper with her. Then, to make matters worse, I found out Dakota had started a GoFundMe page. She was using my name and telling this sob story about being a single mom abandoned by her fiancé. She even posted an old picture of us together, making it look like we were still a happy couple. The description on the page was heart-wrenching. Dakota wrote about how she was struggling to afford prenatal care, how she might lose her apartment, how she was scared for her baby's future. She painted herself as this helpless victim, and me as the heartless villain who had left her high and dry. I was beyond angry. This wasn't just annoying anymore, it was full-on defamation. I contacted GoFundMe and managed to get the page taken down, but not before she'd raised a few $100s from sympathetic strangers. The whole situation was starting to affect my daily life. I was constantly on edge, worried about what Dakota might do next. I found myself avoiding social situations, tired of having to explain or defend myself. Even going to the grocery store became stressful. I was always worried I'd run into someone who believed Dakota's lies. I thought about taking legal action for defamation, but my lawyer advised against it. He said it would just drag out the drama and give Dakota more opportunities to spread her lies. As frustrating as it was, the best thing to do was ignore her and focus on moving forward with my life. It's been hard, but I'm trying to stay positive. I've started making plans to move to a new city for a job opportunity. The idea of a fresh start, away from all this drama, is really appealing right now. The job opportunity came up unexpectedly. A college friend who works for a tech startup in Seattle reached out to me about an opening in their development team. At first, I was hesitant. Moving across the country seemed like a drastic step. But the more I thought about it, the more appealing it became. I went for an interview last week, and it went really well. The company culture seems great, and the work would be challenging in a good way. Plus, Seattle is beautiful, all that nature right at my doorstep would be amazing for hiking. I haven't made a final decision yet, but I'm strongly considering it. Part of me feels like I'm running away from my problems, but another part thinks this could be exactly what I need to move on with my life. I just hope that once I'm gone, Dakota will finally give up and leave me alone for good. I'm ready to put this whole nightmare behind me and start the next chapter of my life. Update 3. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I'm happy to say that things have finally started to settle down. I ended up taking that job in Seattle, and the move has been exactly what I needed. Being away from all the drama and having a fresh start has done wonders for my mental health. The first few weeks after the move were tough. I was in a new city where I didn't know anyone, starting a new job, and still processing everything that had happened with Dakota. There were moments when I questioned if I'd made the right choice. But gradually, things started to improve. My new job is challenging but rewarding. I'm working on exciting projects and learning a lot. My coworkers have been welcoming, and I've even made a few friends outside of work. I've joined a hiking group and have been exploring the beautiful trails around Seattle almost every weekend. Shortly after I moved, I got an unexpected call from Chris, 28M, Dakota's ex and the actual father of her baby. We hadn't spoken since everything went down, so I was surprised to hear from him. He called to apologize, which caught me off guard. Chris explained that Dakota had been doing the same thing to him, spreading lies, trying to manipulate him, and making his life difficult. He said he was trying to step up as a father, but Dakota was making it nearly impossible. She was using the baby as a bargaining chip, refusing to let him see the child unless he got back together with her. Hearing this, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was angry all over again at how Dakota was behaving. But on the other hand, I felt a weird sense of validation. It wasn't just me, Dakota really was out of control. Chris and I ended up talking for a while, comparing notes on our experiences with Dakota. It was oddly cathartic to connect with someone else who understood exactly what I'd been through. We weren't exactly friends, but there was a mutual respect and understanding between us. As for Dakota, I've heard through the grapevine that she's still trying to stir up drama back home. But being in a new city, surrounded by new people who don't know anything about my past, has given me the space I needed to heal and move on. I've started dating again, cautiously. It's been hard to trust after everything that happened with Dakota, but I'm working on it. I met a girl named Rachel, 26F, at a coffee shop a few weeks ago, and we've been on a couple of dates. It's nothing serious yet, but it's nice to feel that spark of connection again. I'm still in therapy, working through the trust issues and residual anger from my experience with Dakota. It's a process, but I can feel myself making progress. I'm learning to open up again, to not let one bad experience color my view of all relationships. Looking back on everything that's happened, I can see now how close I came to getting trapped in a toxic situation. If I hadn't trusted my gut when things felt off with Dakota, if I hadn't stood my ground when she tried to manipulate me into raising a child that wasn't mine, my life could be very different right now. I'm proud of myself for having the strength to walk away, even when it was incredibly difficult. And I'm grateful for the friends and family who stood by me through it all. To anyone else going through something similar, my advice would be this: trust your instincts, don't let anyone manipulate you into accepting unacceptable behavior, and don't be afraid to cut toxic people out of your life, even if they're someone you once loved. It hasn't been an easy journey, but I'm in a much better place now. I'm looking forward to the future and excited to see what this new chapter of my life will bring. For the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about what's to come.